Welcome back to EcoMotion Conversations. EcoMotion's mission is the cost-effective greening of cities, corporations, and campuses. This podcast series digs for key insights from leading green thinkers, their works, their passions, lessons learned, and turning to my guest, just what keeps your engines charged. I'm delighted to be here with Jigar Shah. He is going to inspire us, to challenge us, to excite us, and we'll just jump right in. Good morning, how are you?
Very well. Thanks for coming here. This is fantastic.
Well, we're very pleased to be here. Now, you are heralded as the founder or the godfather of the power purchase agreement. That's a huge distinction. Congratulations to you, and you've created a massive movement in our industry. So, how did you come up with the PPA model? Where did that inspire? When was the epiphany? What hit you? How did this come about?
I think the honest truth is that I didn't come up with anything as much as I repurposed something that was already being done. I think people had already looked at energy savings agreements in the energy efficiency space for years. And so it was really trying to redo the energy savings agreement for the solar industry. And there were hundreds of people that worked on helping to make this thing happen, but we finally got it there.
But they were usually using a performance contracting model, right? They would take a share of the savings.
Yeah.
And it seems like in sort of very simplistic terms that you left that shared savings arrangement and you went more to a solar as a service. I'm going to pay you for your solar kilowatt hours, right?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And it was, it certainly greatly simplified baselining and all of the things that we find to be problematic with energy savings contracts. Right. Just selling kilowatt hours is something that people are used to seeing from their electric utility company for years, right? And so it's
sure.
it was a fairly simple concept. It certainly wasn't easy to implement, but it was a
right.
fairly simple
And let me
concept.
see if I get the chronology. Born in India, right?
Yep.
Age 4, 5, moved to the States? How old
When I
were
was
you?
1. Yeah.
When you're 1, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, even earlier. So, and then college at University of Illinois?
That's right.
Now, is that when you started getting into this model, or is it more graduate program in Maryland?
I really started getting into solar when I was 16, and then really studied it a lot when I was in college. And then the model I think came to me after years of talking to clients and customers and realizing that they just weren't prioritizing solar with their capital, right? Everything was more important than solar, whether it was their kid's summer camp or a new car they had to buy or a remodeled kitchen. There was always something they wanted to do that was more important than
So make it
solar.
as simple as them paying their utility bill.
That's right.
Instead of paying the utility, they're paying their solar provider. And
that's right.
As long as it's about the same, or if it's less, even better.
That's right. So the insight was, if we brought the capital, would they also take so long to make a decision? The answer was no.
Right.
And then, if we brought the capital, how could we ensure that the providers of the capital are going to get paid back? And that was, sort of the secret sauce.
Right. Well, and it's just been, I thank you, because we work with all these school districts. They don't have the cash. We work with cities. They don't want to, they prioritize other things. And so this has been a terrific mechanism. Has the PPA mechanism lived up to your expectations?
Yeah, I think that any financial instrument is sort of just that, a financial instrument, right? So the question then becomes, is it capable of really, surviving the test of scale? And I think the PPA has survived the test of scale, and today it's being used, at a multi-billion-dollar level in the United States, and has attracted almost $1 trillion globally.
Yeah, that's right. So what do you think, what is the volume now in the United States, annual volume of PPA
It's about 20
deals?
billion or so of PPAs, power purchase agreements.
And you get a share of every one of those
Yeah,
dollars?
exactly. Exactly. Do you hear all the coins
falling out of your pocket? No, that's fantastic. You must be very proud, or at least your wife must be very proud of you.
No, well, I'm very proud, and frankly, I think all the hundreds of people that helped me to put it together, I think, are very proud, and they're all sprinkled across the solar industry today. I mean, the Sun Edison alumni are, all over the place,
everywhere,
around the world, and they're doing great things, and so it brings me great joy.
Yeah, and we're seeing in our, in these past few decades, we're seeing this transformation. From Mike Peavy, who was the president of the PUC, Ted, just be patient. Just be patient. I'm not a patient person. He said, be patient. And now, we can look after 10 or 20 years and just see dramatic results. Now, you founded and headed up Sun Edison, which I think became the biggest solar company in the United States. Is that?
It, at one point, was the
right?
largest solar company in the world. Yeah.
Now, and then you went to the Carbon War Room, which I just met you this morning, but I'm imagining you went from being deep in the solar business to wanting to get more into a policy framework. Was that the transition? Was that the allure of going to the Carbon War Room? Or
the Carbon War Room was founded by Sir Richard Branson,
yeah.
which you can imagine. I mean, if he's anything, he's sort of the patron saint of entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And so, to me, it was less policy and more entrepreneurship, right? I mean, I think what I had recognized was that there were tens of thousands of entrepreneurs around the world who all had the same, desire, which was to take their climate solution and scale it to relevance.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of things that were holding them back, right? Policy could be one of them, but it could also be industry standards. It could also be availability of finance. It could be lots of things. And what we found was that Richard Branson and his friends could play a huge role in unlocking those barriers that were standing in the way of those entrepreneurs.
And so you and he, I guess, and others came up with this whole notion of creating carbon wealth.
Yeah.
Kind of flipping a problem, right? Taking a problem, a big threat to our society, and turning it into profit centers, really.
Well, I mean, I think that before we started the Carbon War Room, the common frame was shared sacrifice, right? Everyone needed to spend an extra cup of coffee a month to be able to solve the
Jimmy
climate problem.
Carter put on the sweater, right?
And you can imagine that that's not really an inspirational message.
Yeah.
And so what we realized, this was really the largest wealth creation opportunity in our lifetimes. When you think about taking all of the embedded infrastructure that had been built since the 40s, post World War II,
Yeah.
and converting it all into a climate-friendly infrastructure package, using technologies that had largely been around since the 70s. That's a huge amount of money, right? I mean, it's something about $5 trillion a year that gets diverted from bad stuff to good stuff.
Right.
Right? And, folks who are working on making that conversion are going to get fabulously wealthy.
Right.
And so then the question becomes, how do we inspire the best and the brightest to choose this as their, vocational pursuit, as opposed to, create an app for their phone?
Right. I was just at a conference at the Getty Center on Friday, and we had the governors of Washington and Oregon, mayor of Los Angeles, but talking about that whole Pacific region, including British Columbia, has become really a leader in creating carbon wealth, I guess, and jobs have been fantastic in the clean tech space, and the GDPs are up and outstripping the rest of the nation dramatically.
Right.
So we've really gone from that sense of sacrifice to this is a
Opportunity.
new and a
absolutely.
terrific opportunity.
And
for so many of
policy
us.
plays a critical role there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the renewable portfolio standards have forced the utility companies to sign contracts that they may not have otherwise signed. The next phase, which the Pacific Coast is trying to do, is this extended producer responsibility and getting manufacturers to be responsible for making sure that full recycling occurs. So policy matters, and then once the policy gets passed, then entrepreneurs can come in and sell their solutions.
Yeah. Just really an aside, but what was it like to work with Richard Branson? He's
the guy is really, really smart, and he comes off as aloof and not quite serious.
a balloonist,
balloonist, all
record
those things,
recording
right?
artist, signing up people.
But that really is his external persona. I mean, internally the guy is a shark, and what he really is looking for is figuring out how to actually take basically the brand and the sort of free publicity that he gets to dramatically reduce the cost of marketing for his companies.
Yeah.
Right? And he provides people a better experience, and in exchange, they keep up his antics and whatnot, and he's able to get, for a lot of these businesses, you're spending 10% of revenue on marketing.
Yeah.
Right? If he can reduce that to 5% of revenue, that's a lot of additional profit.
Right.
Now,
Where did he see this? Where did he see that combination with Rocky Mountain Institute being so valuable? Or did you introduce that idea? Or?
Well, I think that the big challenge with energy efficiency and all these other sort of areas is that there's a consumer element to this, right? Which is where Richard is, king, right? And we've never really solved that nut, right? I mean, we've never, even since the 70s, been able to say that this conversion is actually sexy and something that should be prioritized, right? For a long time, it was sort of Jimmy Carter wearing a sweater.
It was a
right?
fringe activity,
and
right?
it still is sort of, sort of billed as doing more with less,
Yeah.
which is not the most inspirational story, right?
Yeah.
And so the tech story of saying, actually, the fact that I can control my thermostat from my phone is pretty damn cool, right? The fact that I can actually see whether my doors are locked and my windows are shut from my phone is really cool, right? And that tech is now providing the level of energy efficiency that folks heretofore weren't really inspired to do, right? And I think Richard has seen that that is the next generation of Rocky Mountain Institute.
Yeah, fantastic. So then what led to your, is it a pivot to generate capital, or is it, I mean, you're still on the board of Rocky Mountain Institute.
Well, I just dropped off the board after being term limited. But,
okay.
but basically, I think that, yeah, I mean, generate capital is a natural evolution of my beginning, right? I mean, my beginning was really around figuring out solar as a service. And now, generate capital is actually inspiring infrastructure as a service. So what we're doing is finding the entrepreneurs who are starting the Sun Edisons in their field and providing them the necessary capital to do the first institutional investments, right? Because what we're finding is whether it's anaerobic digesters or compost facilities or recycling or, electric vehicles, every one of them is misunderstood. They go to their local bank, they go to their local solar or wind investor, and they're saying, we don't understand you. We understand solar and wind, but we don't understand anaerobic digesters. We certainly don't understand carbon black, using biomass as a service, right? That all of these newfangled technologies, which have been around since the 70s, right, are something that they're misunderstanding. And so Generate steps in and says, we understand project finance. And it doesn't really matter what you're doing as long as it fits this formula. But if it fits this formula, we feel like we have a realistic vision of getting paid back.
Right. And what percentage of your deals now are solar?
Very few. I mean, I would say that we're less than 25% solar.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, we do a lot of battery storage.
Yeah, that was my next question. How is storage affecting your business and our country, I suppose? But let's focus on your business. I mean, it's that you're financing a lot of batteries in combination with other technologies, or sometimes independent of other
For a
technologies?
long time, the batteries that we funded were really independent.
Yeah.
I think the solar plus storage thing has started to take off, but it's still quite confusing to people. And I think that the projects that we've been doing have been examples of what others can copy, and so I think that is going a long way to getting people to confidently provide that service. But storage fundamentally, I think, is actually valuable to the grid, not really, or to the customer, not really to the solar. It just happens that they can be sold together.
And in some cases, they're conflicting with each other because of the rate changes and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it seems like most battery systems in California, I'm guessing, over 90% behind the meter are 2-hour discharge batteries, right?
Yeah.
So now we're going into this. You financed the Santa Rita Union School District project where we have energy resilience, and we're really looking at not 2-hour batteries, but we're looking at batteries to power a school for the whole day, and then indefinitely if the grid goes down.
Yeah.
So have you financed, is this your first resilience project that you financed?
Well, the resilience is in the eye of the customer. So
Okay.
there may have been other deals that we've done that they view as resilience, but this is certainly one of the ones that we're most proud of. And thank you very much for your role in making this happen. I think that schools in particular are looked to by the community as places to go to in an emergency, right? It's a place that needs to be safe enough for children, and certainly can be safe enough to provide services for the whole community. And so the sense that I get is that this project has brought pride not only to the school district and the decision makers there, but also to the community at large, which I think is critical.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that occurred to me as we got deeper into the project, I was originally just asked to come up and provide batteries for the school district, and then we realized the solar and storage play, and then we realized that we were really creating microgrids, carbon-free microgrids, financed thanks to you, and then we realized, and this played very well with the school board, that if we had these capabilities, that these in a prolonged outage, heaven forbid, but in a prolonged outage, these can become terrific community assets, and the board went crazy over this idea. So we've been in discussions with the Red Cross. I've been with Cal OES, Office of Emergency Services. I was at a FEMA training the other day. We're figuring out the protocols for these campuses to become what I'm called powered emergency response centers, that can be these tremendous community benefits. So it's terrific. I'm a little concerned going forward. I'm trying to figure out how we finance what I'll call resiliency or 7 or 8 hour battery storage on campuses going forward. In this Santa Rita case, we had a combination of solar storage, microgrid controls, energy management systems, electric buses. We had a whole package going on. But it's going to be interesting to see how we finance that sort of level of resiliency.
Well, look, I think that the solar industry has gotten itself into a frame of mind, which is probably unhealthy, right? The bottom line is that solar industry can get a lot of money to school districts that don't have a lot of cash in their budget, right? And the frame that we've given people is that, well, you need to save 20% of your electricity bill to make this pencil or worth doing, right? And the bottom line is that for a school district, 20% savings on electricity is real money.
Yeah.
But it's not a big deal, right? Ultimately, for these schools, they may have a $1.8 billion budget, right? And we're saving them $25,000 a year, right? That's not a big number. Now, if they pledge that $25,000 towards resiliency every year, we can actually fully compensate for the batteries and the extra cost of putting those batteries in, which is what we did at Santa Rita.
Right.
So then you're at a place where you can create a resiliency package that doesn't cost the school any more than they would have paid otherwise to the utility, but they get all these other features and benefits, right? And that transition of a conversation is very hard for the solar industry. They're so used to saying we're saving you 20%.
Right.
But in fact, the 20% is meaningless to the school. Yes, maybe it pays for a few more books here or a few more chalkboards or whatever it is. But in the end, right, what matters more to the school district is that the kids are safe and that this becomes a community asset. Right. And I think that the solar industry basically has to go away from selling a commodity to selling something more value added.
Right. And I know in Santa Rita, they're happy to pay the exact same annual power bill.
That's right.
That they were paying to PG&E, and now they've got 100% solar in their campuses, and there's tremendous resiliency, and it's a happy story. So I guess, Jigar, you would say then for the hundreds of campuses that already have solar, that if we wanted to finance resiliency, we'd have to set up some sort of a green revolving fund, or we'd have to set up a way that they would take their savings from the existing solar and dedicate that revenue, that saving stream, that revenue stream to paying for resilience going forward.
Well, I mean, you could simply just amend the document, right? The document that they already have that says that they're paying 14 cents a kilowatt hour, you now charge them 18 cents a kilowatt hour, which is their full savings, right? And you say, well, we're adding a battery now, right? Okay. So, I mean, and the battery then would be eligible for the tax credits and all that stuff. And so I think there's actually a relatively simple way to do this. I think that the problem is really around changing the mindset of the decision maker and saying, yes, you're paying an extra 4 cents a kilowatt hour. Those are 4 cents that you would have saved. But in fact, you're investing that 4 cents now into this resiliency infrastructure, which keeps the children far more safe and provides this community asset.
Now, that makes a lot of sense to me, and you've greatly educated me already this morning. Thank you very much for that. David Kuhnhart, our friend David Kuhnhart, head of SolarLab, who's going to be we're interviewing next for our video, went out to something like 15 different financiers.
Yeah.
And all of them turned this down because there was no revenue stream, from the batteries. What's the matter with them? Why didn't they jump on this? Are the investors just too cautious to take on it?
Well, look, I mean, Generate Capital was set up to be able to say yes to these kinds of deals. Yeah. Right? The vast majority of folks are set up to say no to anything that's not in their box. Yeah. Right? So when they went out and raised money from their investors, they said they were going to do plain vanilla solar deals. Yeah. This was not a plain vanilla solar deal, and so therefore they were obligated to say no. I don't fault them for that. Yeah. But I do think that that's why we were set up differently, because whether it's batteries plus solar or whether it's anaerobic digesters, there's a lot of technologies out there that are worth funding and situations that are worth funding that others are just not allowed to fund.
Right. So you've got a group of investors that trust you to make, you're going out on, not on a limb, you're going out on a progressive edge. It's not the bleeding edge of innovation, but you're going out taking more chance than most investors would So you must have a group of investors that just say, we get it, we understand that Jigar Shah is going
Yeah,
to bring
well,
us...
myself and my partners, right, and then the 30 employees that work here, I think we're definitely trusted to verify that these projects fit into a box which is more diverse than other people's boxes, right?
Yeah.
Our box is still the same as everybody else's box around getting paid back, right? We're not a venture capital firm, so we're not intended to take the kind of risks that venture capitalists take where the technology could just fail, right? So in this particular project, we're using standard off-the-shelf solar panels, and then we're working with, a billion-dollar company in Sharp, to actually put in quality batteries with quality control systems, with a quality warranty to actually ensure that it's going to work as designed for the remaining life of the contract.
That's right. That's a good reality check for me. I remember we were pushing the Avalon battery, the flow batteries, vanadium flow batteries that are probably a terrific technology going forward, but not proven yet. And that company not particularly bankable. I imagine they have a short track record. And
well, and so for a lot of those companies, I do think there's a pathway for them. They just have to find a bigger entity to wrap their technology. So for instance, EOS, which is another battery technology out there, has been wrapped by Siemens. So Siemens has said, in exchange for being able to provide the inverters and the control systems and all the other hardware which we're selling and making money on, we will wrap this technology because we've done full due diligence and we believe in this company. Now, they could do the same for Avalon, and and there are others like ABB or Schneider Electric or GE or others that can do that for Avalon, right? And ultimately, the reason why this matters so much is that our investors are infrastructure investors, right? They want to put money to work and get money back over 20 years, right? They don't want to be in the business of speculating on whether this company is going to take off and this technology is going to become the new hot thing.
So as long as somebody, like you said, wraps it, like a Siemens or somebody like that, embraces it, that gives the confidence. Because you had that insight to bring Black & Veatch in to do the engineering of the microgrids in Santa Rita. And then to bring in Sharp, and we've really enjoyed working with Kirk Stokes, a great guy.
Oh my God, that guy and I have known each other since he worked at Alpha Technologies back in like '99. And so he's been a very good friend for a very long time. And it's one of those things where I think that there is a desire to paint people like me as, sort of Elon Musk innovators who are basically pushing the envelope, doing weird things. And, I'm certainly viewed that way by the very conservative investor class that backs us. But it's still a very conservative investor class. I mean, to really solve climate change, we need to divert and shift $5 trillion of capital a year, right? $5 trillion of capital doesn't want to take venture capital style risks, right? Maybe 100 billion does, or 10 billion. But the rest of it really wants tried and true, well-wrapped solutions, right? And that is what I traffic in. And it's the funniest thing because people say, well, Jigar, you guys are the most innovative. You should want to do this. And I said, well, we are innovative compared to our peers, compared to the other 15 folks that Dave went to.
Right. Let's wrap with a couple questions about how you maintain balance in your life, or if you do. You seem very balanced to me. I think we're Facebook friends. I think you have a child, and it seems like life is really good. But what are you doing to stay healthy and vigorous in life?
Well, look, I think that I learned a long time ago that you always should be surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you and that challenge you. I think there's a lot of people who say that. There are very few people who do that. Right, so my two partners are equals in every way to me, and in fact are better than me in many ways, and that's important, right? This is not all on my shoulders; it's on all three of our shoulders together, which makes it easier. We have a board who constantly challenges us. They are not yes men or yes women board. I mean, these folks actually challenge us, and that means that we don't make as many mistakes, right? I think I'm very careful to only commit to things that I can commit to. I do have a 2.5-year-old, and I want to spend as much time as I can with my young son. And I think it means that all of those incremental conferences that you think you're going to get something out of, you just say no to, right? All those incremental meetings that are sort of in far-flung places, you say no to. And and with technology, I'm able to talk to all those people by Skype or by Zoom or by phone, and still stay in touch with everybody, right? And I just think that there's certain sacrifices that I'm making today that I didn't have to make when I was in my 20s.
That's very interesting that you say that because I completely agree that most of us are just enticed by so many things in life. I know I am. I like this really healthy diversity of projects, and I usually say yes to every speaking engagement and every time to go into schools and talk to kids and all that kind of stuff. But you've got to figure out where those bounds are and what you can do realistically. But it's interesting that you're saying that because you have this reputation of being the guy that talks to everybody.
Well, I do talk to everybody, and I still talk to everybody. We evaluate 600 companies a year, and I have talked to every one of them myself. And I believe that everyone should be given the respect necessary by talking to people directly.
Yeah.
I've never understood the allure of middlemen and folks who screen people out and all that stuff. I think that every person who's working in the climate change movement deserves a fair hearing, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not above anybody else, and I'm happy to spend the time talking to them. I just don't think that I can fly on an airplane and meet with them in person every time.
Right.
It may be a phone call or a video chat instead.
Right.
But look, I think that one of the things that we have lost touch with in this day and age is treating people with respect and kindness by giving them our time, and I think that is something that I will continue to do.
Yeah, and I really appreciated that when you and I started talking about maybe 8 months ago or so. You had your secretary call me up and say, Jigar would like to schedule a phone conversation. And I don't get that very often. For just somebody wanting to understand where I'm coming from and swap notes. We spent almost an hour on the phone, and I told you my life story, and you listened and were interested, and you told me yours, and I was definitely interested. But that, I thank you for that, because I think we all can learn from that. It's too easy to jot a text message or to send an email, but not to really make the connection with somebody that makes you really want to work with that person going forward. So.
Yeah, I turned off notifications for texts on my phone, so it is literally the worst way to reach me.
Yeah.
I have like a 3-day response time to texts, and it's largely because of that. I just never understood the notion of how that is a respectful way to talk with people. I just don't, maybe I'm just old school at this point, but.
Well, I remember when the fax machine, I was at RMI actually when we got our first fax machine. Oh,
right.
It was a big deal.
Right.
And remember they had the paper that rolled up and everything. It was just an awful thing. But when those first faxes came in, everybody dropped everything, running over to the fax machine.
But even the fax machines, I remember working for Public Citizen, where we used to send out, over 10,000 faxes overnight from midnight to 2 in the morning because rates were cheaper then.
Sure.
You had to pay per call back then. And it was so impersonal. I mean, had we gone back to the old church approach of a phone tree and actually called all 10,000 of those people using a phone tree, I think that we would have been more effective, right? And people said, well, but it costs more and whatever else. But if what you're trying to do is to create real human connections by which you can actually organize these very difficult to organize projects. The Santa Rita Schools project was not easy, right? It required a tremendous amount of coordination by yourself, by David and Soled, by the EPC contractor that we ended up hiring, MBL, and all of the complexities of working with the state of California regulations on schools. I mean, it was so complicated, and it worked because people actually genuinely jumped on the phone and talked to each other and coordinated and project managed and genuinely tried to understand people's point of view so that we could craft this financeable deal together. And I don't think that's easy to do by text or by email.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's a pleasure to meet you and to learn from you and to share your lessons learned with others. So I appreciate it very much.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. The only reason why I'm here is because people like yourself are taking on weird and interesting projects and then need weird and interesting financing partners. And so I appreciate all of the endeavors that you continue to pursue.
Good. Well, thank you so much, Jigar.
Thanks.